phase 2, and with this is between the ages of 10 to 12 years old, and it's really like showcasing the beast still in youth level though. So like again, the model should be that people are coming up to you going, who is this kid and how is he this good? Like that is the target that we still want to have. Like that shouldn't go away, by the way, especially in youth, because you've done all these steps that everybody else isn't doing, or at least from my son that he's done that nobody else is doing. And this is really like a specific timeline, and we need to develop some more key technical skills with 7 main targets to grow, which are the following. So here are the objectives we want to reach. We want to have 2 million touches completed by the end of this phase. So by the end of 12, 2 million touches. Basic passing and combination skills. So we basically mastered 1v1 up to this point. So pre-phase 2 is 1v1 mastery. Let's just call it that. Now we start incorporating, again, thinking long-term, not a marathon. Sorry, not a sprint, it's a marathon. Now we're going into basic passing and combinations. We want to master the tactical side of 3v3 and 5v5 combinations. We want to develop game, IQ, and patterns of play, like why we're passing here, what's the purpose, how do we move to receive that ball. So again, basic tactics up to 5v5. We want to travel at least once internationally, so that'd be going to a France, going to a Belgium, a Spain, a Brazil, a Colombia, whatever, to get international experience, which I'll touch on shortly. We want to guest play another 10 to 20 events and continued work on individual tactical concepts. And this is all about getting to work, bro. Like this is the next phase. And like what you need to take away is every single phase is going to have its keys of work. Okay, so what is the deal with this? Like what's the key thing about this phase? Continue to master fundamentals, but now we're really moving into passing concepts and improving decision making. Why, when, where, how. So should I dribble? Should I pass? Why? Okay, and again, still focus on individual skills, but like really trying to think bigger picture here. So it's more juggling, more touch work, and I want you to be able to pass this test just like I did when I had a very good friend of mine who is the current technical director at one of the biggest clubs in France, one of the biggest in the world, come over when I was a kid, and he gave us testing. We had to pass his testing to even be eligible, and this was just the first test. There's multiple tests, by the way, in terms of like playing and whatnot, but this was just a technical test that he gave, and you need to pass it by the end of your 12th birthday, which is 50 right, 50 left, 50 both, and 50 headers. You cannot drop or catch the ball. And you have 3 attempts. So you go from right to left to both to headers. And yes, I did actually have to pass this test and other ones, by the way. So performance testing, game testing, all that kind of stuff before I was even given the opportunity to go overseas to France and to train with his club. Okay, and this was in 2008 when I actually went. And you got to remember, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You don't sprint marathons. It's a process, right? So keep that in mind. So in the tweets and whatnot, I've actually put a video of me at 12 or 13 years old juggling. And again, I'll tell you the same thing. Touch is developed. It's not given from my perspective. So the same thing for my son. Like I'll be able to show him this video, be like, oh, this is me at your age. Can you beat me? I hope yes, but we'll find out. Okay. And then a side note for this, during this age range, I was actually playing up 2 years at this age. So I was U12 or U13, and I was playing U14, U15. So I think it's very important. Kids have the opportunity to play up, and they need to do that. And then a side note, if you watch the video of my tweets, then you're going to see that I was predominantly right foot. So basically what I had to do at this stage was perform emergency surgery because my left foot wasn't good enough. And it took me about 2 years to really get it up to level, to the same standard as my right. It's at least very close to it. But it took a while to get it to that point. Like I had to do a lot, like hours of reps, especially left foot, just left foot, just to get up to the standard of the right foot. Okay, so that's why I recommend, like I put it in the pre-phase, 50% right, 50% left. In fact, I'll probably develop the left foot a little bit more to start because there's less left footers than right footers in the world of football. So you have a small advantage with that. But if they're, able to use both feet extremely well, so if my son can use both very, very well, like almost equally, that's the best thing you could possibly do. Okay, and once core proficiency is achieved, then we can then look at going into team-based concepts. Like that's why I made the comment earlier. You can't have a great team without having great players. You have to build the player to build a team. So once we have that, then we can start doing more tactically based stuff and challenge the kids in a different way. And what I want to talk about now is really how important it is for the core skill to be developed, because like I'm going to give you a list here in a second. You can't do this list of passing stuff without players having core skills, one, but two, very good technique, like very, very good technique that can only be achieved with hours, months, years of repetition. So at this phase 2, we want to do a lot of 1-2s, so give goes, overlaps, underlaps, third man movement, so third man release play, switching sides, so from right to left, left to right, penetrating passes, and then I'd really like to incorporate a lot of futsal rotation because again, they're still not 13 yet. We can still do a lot of futsal. So this would be like in 3-1s, the system of 3-1, a system of 2-2, a system of 4-0. We would do that. And when you play futsal, like you develop all those skills very, very quickly. And just to make sure, rotation, so you understand, this is the key with futsal. Like futsal is a game about rotation, so it's a play. You're in a system like 3-1, and a player runs here. So the fixer runs here, the ala or winger runs here, the pivot goes here. It's all a system. It's a rotation. That's what futsal is about. It's not just foot skills on a ball. Okay, so players need to understand that. And I do want to talk about now quickly about the whole international experience that I mentioned earlier, right? So we can't move internationally, or we're not taking that risk, but we can travel. So we can take 10 days, 14 days, a month or whatever it is, to go travel to a country. Let's just use France because I've been there, and train with clubs. That is the idea. We're not paying for a camp. We may have to pay, but we're paying to go train with a club. So my son can see the actual environment, the actual level, the actual team, the actual coaches. When you do a camp, you don't get that experience, if that makes sense. When you're going to train with a club, you get the entire package. Now, people always say, oh, well, my son needs to go to the big boys, PSG, Real Madrid. Everybody wants to go to PSG. And to get your foot through that door, your kid has to be so good that he's the next Phil Foden. Like, that's the idea. Okay, so I need my son to see the real level of football. So we would go to France for 3 weeks, as an example. And we could train with 1 club, 2 clubs, 3 clubs, whatever. But we would go train so he can see what the level looks like. Because it may seem like that the level's getting closer. This is my personal opinion, I think it's getting closer with the 0.01%. So our top level talent is getting closer. The rest of the country is not. And most of our top level talent had to leave the country as a kid to go to Europe or go to South America to get this experience. Okay, so the level gap, like you need to understand, like the level gap is huge. It's very big, and it's only getting bigger. It's only widening. It's not getting smaller. So like I said, we would go to France and we would train with clubs. So we would shoot for like Division 3, Division 4, maybe League 2, just as the example. But like it's much easier to get into a smaller club than a big boy. So my recommendation is go for the smaller clubs, get your foot through the door, and especially at this age, the gap between the levels, say a Division 3 to Division 1, from a level perspective, isn't that far off. It's very similar. Once you get to 13, that's when the gaps start increasing between the teams in Europe. You'll start seeing a real gap. The only thing you'll really probably notice is the infrastructure difference, which would be, not as good facility, not state of the art, that stuff. Like, does that make a difference? Sure. But from a playing perspective, if you go at this phase, it's very similar. Okay, so just make sure you understand that. And this is why I keep talking about how important is networking. Like, you have to be building a network, and I hope you started before phase 2, but like just trying to create options and ideas and people that you can meet with to help your son maybe get to the next level. And the only way you're going to get an opportunity like this is by having connections. Like, there's no other way to do it. Without having a network, you're not getting overseas. And that might be that, like, for example, you might have to take a trip to Europe, for example. Before that, just go knock on doors at clubs, go meet people, have conversation. Hey, I have a son, I'd like to bring him. and you might have to do a trip before that. So like, before you get this trip where you train, you might have to go to Europe for a week, go to a country, visit 15, 20 clubs. 2 of them will let you in, but you have to be willing to take that risk, and that's part of the business. So this experience that he's going to participate in by going overseas and training with a club is either going to reinforce his decision to want to keep going to be a pro, or he's going to say, this is not for me. And either answer is okay. Whatever he wants to do, either stepping out or stepping forward, it's okay. I just need to know, because like, it's all sequencing, it's all pathing, it's all progression. If he wants to continue, we have to keep stepping up the ladder to get to the top. If he doesn't, that's cool. It lets me save my time, save my money, save my energy and my resources. Right? I don't have to spend money to take him to Europe anymore. If he wants to go be a doctor, then we go take him to be a doctor. But the sooner I can know what he really wants to do, and this is why this phase will reinforce that decision. Do you really want to go for this, son? Or do you want to take a step back and do a different route? Either one is okay. I just need to know. Okay, and you're going to see that it's a big level gap, and it's going to be very eye-opening, and it's very hard. Like, the level is so different. Like, we don't have a pathway here. They do. It's not easy, but it's easier to move up from the levels because there's an actual pathway. So I want to give you this example, okay? So like Jude Bellingham signs for Real Madrid for like 105 or 115 million euros or whatever it was. People don't understand, or maybe don't remember this. He was actually formed in the championship. He was formed in a club in the championship, Birmingham City. And he became a pro at 16 years old. So you don't have to be a Premier League club or play for a Premier League club to get to the top. He was at Birmingham City, went to Dortmund shortly afterwards, and now he's going to Real Madrid. So he started at a smaller club, worked his way through the academy, got to the first team at 16 years old, then gets signed to go to Borussia Dortmund. From Dortmund, does very well, obviously, and now gets picked up by Real Madrid. So that just emphasizes the point that lower levels have amazing development and can have amazing development. Again, maybe not the infrastructure as the big boys, but they produce talent. Just look at Jude Bellingham again, okay? So, and just for reference, right, so people understand this, and this is how it works overseas, because you may not know this. Most places have compensation for formation, which means the club takes the risk for development. So we accept the risk, say we essentially, if not pay for your son entirely, cover 90% of his cost. And we get compensation if he becomes a pro. So the incentive overseas in most countries is to develop talent. For the US, there's no incentive for development. And they use a model called compensation for formation. We use a model called pay to play. There's no incentive in pay to play for people to develop and produce talent. And the risk in compensation for formation is on the club to produce, to earn more money. So when Jude Bellingham signed for Real Madrid, his club that formed him, Birmingham City, wasn't involved in the transfer, by the way, but they received a check for $6 million. Well, I think it was actually pounds or euros, but the point is they received a check for $6 million, all because they formed him. That money is going to be reinvested into the academy, I'm sure. So it just essentially pays for itself. Okay, but it's a look at short-term versus long-term investment, which is a big difference here. And next part of this is, again, I was talking about Croatia earlier. They've released the Croatian Football Federation Development Curriculum. It is one of the best reads you'll ever read in your entire life. If you've not picked it up, I recommend you go get it. I don't even have an affiliate link on this. I'm just telling you, you need to read this. And they have a part to this which is called the 104 Technical Elements. So all 104 are introduced between U8 and U13. And it's in the book. You can read it. And they break them down per age where you need to do them. And I call this all game-based applicable technique. So it's not cone patterns, it's not a bunch of silly stuff or cone drills. It's game-based technique, which would be including tackling. Tackling, that's a game-based technique. Long passes, passes on the ground, juggling, all game-based stuff that they're trying to do. And there's 104 of them. I'm not going to go through the list of them. If you want to see them, you can either buy the book, or I have posted their specific parts on my Twitter feed in my pinned tweets where you can actually read this playbook. I have them all there in pinned tweets and you can read every single one of them. Okay, but again, it's what you need to take away from that is the 104 technical elements are game-based. It's game-related technique. It's not what we see half the time in this country of like cone drills and whatnot. It's all game-based technique, and it's all about developing the player to have the skill to perform in the game. Again, game-based technique. So again, you can read them in my Twitter feed under my pinned tweets, or you can buy the book, the Croatian Football Federation Development Curriculum, and I'm telling you, it is 100% worth it. It will change your life forever. I've read it 3 times. I'm reading it a 4th time, and it just blows my mind the amount of information impacted in that. And it's what I believe we should follow, considering the fact that we have, just in the state of Florida alone, 30 million people. Yet Croatia has 3 to 4 million people, and they're producing a Ballon d'Or winner and getting to World Cup finals, World Cup semifinals, Nation League finals. We're not even close to that. So just for reference, man. And let's get into phase 3.